The family dinner table fell silent as my mother-in-law, Eleanor Sullivan, slammed her designer handbag onto the mahogany surface. "This charade has gone on long enough," she declared, pulling out a stack of papers. "I've hired private investigators to look into your background, Linda. It's time my son knew the truth about who he married." I kept my face carefully neutral, continuing to feed my 6-month-old daughter her baby food. My husband Michael looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Eleanor spread the papers dramatically across the table. "Your wife isn't just a secretary at Morgan Enterprises as she claims. She's been lying about everything. If only she knew how right and wrong she was at the same time. Yes, I wasn't just a secretary. I was the CEO and majority owner of Morgan Enterprises, working undercover to investigate a series of suspicious acquisitions. But I couldn't reveal that yet, not until we found out who was trying to steal my company." According to these investigations, Eleanor continued smugly, she's been accessing confidential company files, attending secret meetings, and hiding her real activities from everyone. Michael turned to me, hurt in his eyes. "Linda, is this true?" I started, but Eleanor wasn't finished. "She's obviously trying to steal company secrets for a competitor. Why else would a mere secretary have access to the CEO's private files?" She turned to Michael. "Darling, I've already contacted our lawyers. We can have this marriage annulled, claiming fraud." What Eleanor didn't know was that her own recent activities had raised red flags in our security system. Anonymous shell companies trying to buy up Morgan Enterprises stock, suspicious emails from offshore accounts, all traced back to the Sullivan family's private server. "Think about it," Eleanor pressed. "Have you ever seen her boss, this mysterious CEO she claims to work for?" "No one has, because she's been lying about everything." Michael looked torn. We'd met when he came to fix the company's 8 systems, me pretending to be a secretary, him unaware that I owned the building he was working in. It had been real, falling in love with someone who didn't know about my wealth or power. "There's more," Eleanor smiled coldly. "I've already spoken to Morgan Enterprises' board of directors. They're very interested in what I've discovered of their employees' activities." My phone buzzed. A message from my head of security. "URGENT, Sullivan Industries attempting hostile takeover. Emergency board meeting call for tomorrow." Eleanor was right about one thing. It was time for the truth to come out, just not the truth she expected. As if on cue, my daughter knocked over her bowl of baby food, splattering Eleanor's evidence files with pureed carrots. "You can't even control your own child." Eleanor snapped. "How could you possibly be anything more than what you are? A secretary who tricked my son into marriage?" I stood up slowly, wiping my daughter's face. "You're right, Eleanor. It's time everyone knew the truth." I pulled out my phone, pressing a single button. Send in the files. The doorbell rang, and Eleanor's smug smile began to fade. The door opened to reveal James Parker, Morgan Enterprises' silver-haired chief legal officer. Behind him stood a team of serious-looking executives, all members of the board Eleanor had claimed to be in contact with. "Mrs. Sullivan," James nodded politely at my mother-in-law. "I believe you've been expecting us, though perhaps not quite like this." Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands began to shake. I don't understand. I spoke with the board yesterday." "No," James corrected, setting down his briefcase. "You spoke with actors hired by your private investigator. The real board has been monitoring your activities very carefully." Michael stood up, tech expert mind quickly connecting dots. "Mom, what have you done?" James pulled out a laptop, displaying emails and financial records. "Mrs. Sullivan has been attempting to orchestrate a hostile takeover of Morgan Enterprises through a series of shell companies. Unfortunately for her, she was trying to steal from the wrong person." "That's ridiculous," Eleanor protested. "I was protecting the company from her." She jabbed a finger at me. "She's the one accessing confidential files." "Of course she is," James smiled. "They're her files." The room went silent except for my daughter's happy babbling as she played with her spoon. "What do you mean, her files?" Michael asked quietly. I took a deep breath. "My full name is Linda Morgan Chen. I'm not the CEO's secretary. I'm the CEO and majority shareholder of Morgan Enterprises." Eleanor laughed hysterically. "Impossible. The CEO is a reclusive genius who never appears in public. Everyone knows that. Yes, James agreed. A carefully crafted image that allowed Ms. Morgan to work alongside her employees, learning every aspect of her company while watching for corporate espionage. Like, for example, a mother-in-law using her son's credentials to hack our systems. Michael's face went pale. Mom used my security access? Every time you worked late, I explained gently, your mother's team was using your credentials to probe our networks. We detected it months ago, but needed to understand the full scope of the operation. Eleanor's composure cracked completely. You don't understand. Sullivan Industries is failing. We needed this acquisition to survive. About Sullivan Industries, James interjected, pulling out more documents. Our investigation uncovered some interesting transfers from your company's pension fund. But before he could continue, Eleanor grabbed her phone and pressed a button. Suddenly, every computer screen in the house lit up with the same message. Data transfer initiated. If I'm going down, she snarled, I'm taking your precious company's secrets with me. What she didn't notice was my daughter, still playing with her spoon, happily pressing buttons on the special toy phone I'd given her to play with. A phone that was about to disrupt Eleanor's entire plan. Data transfer complete. The screens flashed, and Eleanor's triumphant smile lasted exactly 3 seconds before all the displays changed to show a cartoon baby giggling. What? What is this? She demanded. I picked up my daughter's toy phone. A decoy network. Did you really think I'd let you access our real systems through Michael's home office? Every file you thought you were stealing has been fake, created specifically for you to find. Impossible. Eleanor's perfectly maintained facade was crumbling. Our tech team confirmed. Your tech team. Michael interrupted, understanding dawning on his face. You mean the same team that's been helping you empty our employees' pension funds? James nodded gravely. We have proof that Sullivan Industries has been systematically draining their pension accounts to fund this takeover attempt. Over 3,000 employees' retirement savings gone. Eleanor's phone rang. Her face went ashen as she read the message. No, this isn't happening. That would be the SEC, James explained. They're currently raiding Sullivan Industries offices. Your board members are being arrested as we speak. But Eleanor wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at her phone, fingers flying across the screen. You think you've won? I still have one card left to play. She looked up with a dangerous smile. Tell them about Project Phoenix, Linda. Tell them what Morgan Enterprises is really working on. I felt the blood drain from my face. Project Phoenix was our most classified research initiative, a quantum computing breakthrough that could revolutionize global communications. No one outside the highest levels of the company knew about it. How do you know about Phoenix? I demanded. Because Eleanor's smile widened. I have someone on the inside. Someone much closer than you think. She looked meaningfully at Michael. My husband stood frozen, his face unreadable. Michael? I whispered. What is she talking about? I'm so sorry, Linda, he said quietly. But there's something I never told you about why I really came to work at Morgan Enterprises. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as my world began to tilt on its axis. But before Michael could continue, our daughter let out a happy squeal and pressed one more button on her toy phone. The screens around us suddenly filled with new information that made both Michael and Eleanor's faces go white with shock. Project Phoenix isn't what you think it is, I said quietly, as the screens displayed the full truth of our quantum computing research. It was never about communications technology. My daughter giggled again, pressing more buttons on her special phone. Actually, a quantum encrypted controller connected to Morgan Enterprises' real network. It's about protection. Michael finished, his voice filled with dawning understanding. You were building a defense system. Eleanor stared at the screens in confusion. I don't understand. Our intelligence said. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to find, I explained. Because Project Phoenix's real purpose is to detect and prevent corporate espionage. Like, for example, tracking when someone tries to steal employee pension funds. The screens showed a complex web of financial transactions, every move Sullivan Industries had made, every account they tried to hide, all mapped and documented by our quantum AI. But Michael. Eleanor turned desperately to her son. You said you found evidence of illegal research. The files you accessed were planted, Michael said, because I already knew the truth about Phoenix. I've known for months. My turn to be surprised. You knew? He smiled sadly. I figured it out 3 months ago. The quantum signatures in the network, the pattern recognition algorithms, it could only be defensive technology. That's when I started feeding my mother false information. Eleanor's face contorted with rage. You betrayed me? Your own mother? You betrayed your employees, Michael shot back. Their retirement savings, their futures, and for what? Corporate greed? James stepped forward with more documents. Mrs. Sullivan, we've recovered all the pension funds. They've been secured and returned to their rightful owners with interest. But the takeover, Eleanor sputtered, was never going to work. I finished, because Project Phoenix had already identified and blocked every potential attack vector. Your entire plan was contained from the start. My daughter chose that moment to throw her quantum controller, hitting Eleanor's designer handbag and spilling its contents, including a flash drive labeled Phoenix Data. Your final evidence, I picked up the drive, contains nothing but baby photos, which, honestly, is rather fitting. As FBI agents arrived to arrest Eleanor, Michael turned to me. I should have told you I knew. And I should have told you who I really was, I replied. No more secrets. He smiled, picking up our daughter. No more secrets. 1 year later, Morgan Enterprises' quantum defense system protects companies worldwide from corporate theft. Eleanor serves time for pension fraud, teaching financial literacy classes to fellow inmates, a fitting punishment for someone who stole retirement dreams. Michael now officially heads our cybersecurity division, using his skills to help others instead of hiding them. Our daughter has a real toy phone now, though she sometimes misses her quantum controller. As for me, I still work alongside my employees regularly, but now they know who I am. Because the best way to protect something valuable isn't to hide it away. It's to build a community strong enough to defend it together. The real Project Phoenix wasn't just about quantum computing or corporate defense. It was about rising from the ashes of old secrets to build something truly transparent. Eleanor's office at Sullivan Industries is now a daycare center for our employees' children. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure the next generation never has to face the same battles.
The mahogany-paneled dining room at my parents' Westchester estate sparkled with crystal and silver as Sunday dinner reached its familiar crescendo of family criticism. I sat quietly in my usual corner chair, the one they'd relegated me to since childhood, close enough to be included, distant enough to be ignored. My simple black sweater and worn jeans stood in sharp contrast to my brother Marcus's $3,000 Tom Ford suit and my sister Victoria's designer ensemble that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. So, Emma, Marcus began with that particular smile he reserved for family humiliation, still playing writer in your little apartment? He gestured dismissively with his wine glass, the Bordeaux catching the chandelier light. I mean, it's cute that you're still keeping a diary at 32. But don't you think it's time for some actual career planning? Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and calculated. Oh, come on, Marcus. Emma's artistic phase is charming. Remember when she used to show us those little story notebooks in high school? She turned to me with mock concern. Sweetie, you can't live off creativity and dreams forever. The real world requires actual income. Dad nodded gravely from the head of the table, cutting his prime rib with surgical precision. Your mother and I have been patient, Emma, but this writing hobby has gone on long enough. Marcus has built a successful law practice. Victoria's pharmaceutical consulting brings in 7 figures annually. You're, what? Typing stories on your computer. She probably still thinks someone will discover her talent, Mom added, her voice dripping with that particular brand of maternal disappointment she'd perfected over the years. Like those romance novels will suddenly make her the next. What's her name? That woman who wrote those vampire books? Stephanie Meyer, I said quietly. Exactly. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. That's the problem right there, Emma. You live in fantasy land. 1 in a million writers maybe, get lucky enough to make actual money. The rest spend their lives serving coffee and calling it supporting their art. The familiar sting of their words washed over me. But I'd learned long ago that engaging only provided them with more ammunition. Instead, I took a small bite of my salmon and watched the sun set through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the manicured gardens in golden light. I'm just saying, Victoria continued, warming to the theme, It's time to be realistic. You're 32, single, living in that tiny studio apartment in Queens. Meanwhile, Marcus just bought his second vacation home in the Hamptons, and I'm closing on that penthouse in Manhattan. Success isn't about following dreams, Emma. It's about making practical choices. Nobody reads your little stories anyway, Marcus added with a cruel chuckle. I mean, where do you even submit them? Some online blog? Amateur writing forums? He turned to our parents. She probably has like 12 followers on whatever platform she uses. The conversation would have continued its predictable arc, 30 minutes of systematic dismantling of my life choices, followed by their generous offers to help me find real work in their respective industries, culminating in my polite decline and their frustrated sighs. Except my phone buzzed against the table. The caller ID made my pulse quicken. Penguin Random House office. I glanced around the table, but they were deep in discussion about Victoria's latest pharmaceutical deal, something involving regulatory approvals and international expansion. Perfect timing. Excuse me, I said softly, sliding the answer bar. Hello. Emma. Thank God I reached you. The voice belonged to Marcus Dole, though my family had no way of knowing that. The board meeting just concluded. The acquisition is finalized. $1.2 billion for the entire Harper & Row Holdings portfolio. It's already trending worldwide across all publishing trade platforms. I kept my expression carefully neutral, though my heart raced. The months of negotiations, the careful maneuvering through holding companies and shell corporations, the painstaking process of building a publishing empire while maintaining my cover as a hobby writer. It had all led to this moment. That's excellent news, I replied calmly, my voice carrying just enough to reach my family's end of the table. Please proceed with the announcement. The Wall Street Journal wants a statement from you personally. Forbes is calling it the largest independent publishing acquisition of the decade. Your net worth calculations are, well, let's just say the financial press is having a field day. Marcus had stopped talking mid-sentence about his latest corporate merger. Victoria's fork hung suspended halfway to her mouth. Even Dad had paused in his systematic decimation of his dinner. I see, I continued, still maintaining my composed tone. And the integration timeline? 6 months for full operational merger. Your existing portfolio. The literary agencies, the digital platforms, the international distribution networks. Everything flows seamlessly together. Emma, you've just become the single largest independent publisher in North America. The room had gone completely silent. Mom's wine glass sat forgotten, a red stain slowly spreading across the white tablecloth where she'd apparently missed setting it down properly. Publish that information, I said clearly, making sure each word reached every corner of the dining room. And schedule the press conference for Tuesday morning. Absolutely. Oh, and Emma? The Times wants to know if you're still planning to maintain your anonymity as E.M. Morrison, or if you're ready to reveal that the mysterious publishing mogul behind Morrison Media Group has been hiding in plain sight. I allowed myself the smallest smile. I think it's time for full transparency. Brilliant. I'll have the PR team coordinate everything. Congratulations, Emma. This acquisition officially makes you the youngest female publishing magnate in industry history. I ended the call and placed my phone gently beside my plate. The silence stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the soft ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. That was. I began conversationally, Vice CEO at Penguin Random House. Apparently the acquisition of Harper & Row Holdings closed today. $1.2 billion. I took a sip of water. It's trending worldwide, according to him. Marcus's face had gone an interesting shade of pale. You're CEO? Well, technically I'm the CEO. He's the president of operations. I cut a small piece of salmon. I acquired Penguin Random House about 18 months ago along with Macmillan, several literary agencies, and most of the major digital publishing platforms. The Harper & Row purchase just rounded out the portfolio nicely. Victoria's pharmaceutical consulting contracts suddenly seemed very small in the echoing silence of the dining room. You're saying? Dad's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. You own publishers. Yes. I dabbed my lips with the linen napkin. Morrison Media Group. Perhaps you've heard of it? We represent about 40% of all books published in North America annually. Including, I paused for effect, The entire romance novel division that apparently only 1 in a million writers can crack. Mom's hand was pressed against her chest as if she was having trouble breathing. Morrison Media Group. That's worth. According to Forbes' most recent estimate, about $4.7 billion, though today's acquisition will probably push that closer to $6 billion. I continued eating as if discussing the weather. The little stories you mentioned, Marcus? Last quarter they generated approximately $340 million in revenue across print, digital and international licensing. The antique clock chimed 7 times, each note falling into the absolute stillness of the room like stones into still water. But you live in that tiny apartment, Victoria managed weakly. You drive that old Honda. Tax efficiency, I explained patiently. Also, the apartment is actually the entire top floor. I own the building. The Honda belongs to my assistant. I prefer my driver when I need to travel, but I walk to most of my meetings in Manhattan. I smiled. You'd be surprised how much more productive you can be when you don't waste time on status symbols. Marcus was staring at me as if I'd suddenly grown a second head. The Morrison behind Morrison Media Group. Is you? Emma Morrison? Our Emma. Your Emma who apparently needed career guidance and practical life choices? I confirmed. Yes, that would be me. Dad cleared his throat several times before managing to speak. Emma, we had no idea. You never mentioned. Mention what? That instead of keeping a diary, I was quietly acquiring every major publishing house on the East Coast? That my typing stories on my computer involved managing international distribution deals and coordinating with film studios for adaptation rights. I set down my fork. Why would I mention that? You made it quite clear that my writing was nothing more than an amusing hobby. The doorbell's deep chime echoed through the house, and moments later, our parents' longtime housekeeper appeared in the doorway. Excuse me, Mr. Morrison, but there are several reporters at the front gate. Something about Ms. Emma and a major business announcement. That would be the Wall Street Journal, I said, checking my watch. Probably Forbes and Publishers Weekly as well. The acquisition made the evening news cycle. I stood, smoothing my simple sweater. I should probably head back to the city. I have a board meeting at 8, and the Times wants to interview me about the Morrison Media Group expansion into streaming services. Streaming services? Marcus echoed faintly. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, they all need content. Turns out owning the publishing rights to thousands of novels puts you in an excellent position to negotiate film and television adaptations. I picked up my phone and car keys. Last month's deals should net about $200 million over the next 3 years. Victoria was still sitting frozen, her designer outfit suddenly seeming less impressive against the backdrop of a $6 billion media empire. You know what the funny thing is? I continued, slipping into my jacket. I actually would have loved to share this with my family. To celebrate the victories, discuss the challenges, maybe even get some advice on managing such rapid growth. I paused at the dining room doorway. But every time I tried to talk about my work, you reminded me that nobody reads my little stories. The silence followed me into the marble foyer, where I could see the cluster of news vans through the front window's security glass. Emma, wait, Dad called, but I was already opening the door. The evening air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and the distant sound of reporters setting up their equipment. My driver was already waiting by the Tesla, engine running. The penthouse, Ms. Morrison? He asked as I settled into the back seat. Yes, thank you, James. And call ahead. Let them know I'll need the conference room prepared for the emergency board meeting. I glanced back at the house, where I could see my family's silhouettes framed in the warm light of the dining room windows. It's going to be a long night. As we pulled away, my phone was already buzzing with congratulations from industry colleagues, interview requests from major publications, and strategic partnership proposals from entertainment companies worldwide. The diary scribbles that nobody read had just revolutionized the entire publishing landscape. I settled back into the leather seat and opened my laptop. There were contracts to review, international expansion plans to finalize, and a streaming service launch to coordinate. The girl who supposedly lived in Fantasyland had quite a lot of very real business to attend to. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was my brother standing in the driveway, still wearing his expensive suit, watching my departure with an expression of stunned realization.